Very good afternoon to everyone. Good morning or good evening if you're joining us from Europe or any other part of the world. Welcome to our webinar on Horizon 2030 Emission Control Technology for CV and Off-Highway Industry, brought to you by JAL Test by Kojali. Today, our focus is on emission control and sustainability, for which we have an eminent set of panelists who will share insights on where the Indian CV and off-highway industry ecosystem stands in this regard, and how focusing on the right areas and adoption of the right technology can help accelerate the shift. We will commence with a brief presentation by our session partner Kojali, followed by the panel discussion, post which we will take audience questions for around 5 to 10 minutes. We are delighted to have with us a distinguished set of speakers for today's session, two of them from India, one from Spain, and one from the UK. And it's my privilege to briefly introduce them to you. Our presenter for today is Mr. Jose Ramon Serrano, Chief Business Officer and member of the board, Kojali. With more than 23 years of experience and awarded as a specialist in foreign trade by the Chamber of Commerce, Jose is an expert in the field of sales and business development, of technological solutions for the commercial vehicle aftermarket. And today, his leadership in business management has significantly contributed to positioning Kojali as one of the best in the business, not just in Spain and in Europe, but around the globe. Jose will also be part of our panel discussion, so we look forward to his presentation first and then to his views during the discussion. Next up is a veteran and seasoned expert, Mr. Pradeep Kumar Roy, Head New Business Development at Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery Company. Pradeep has been part of core engineering in auto and steel industries, and later in the Indian construction and mining equipment industry. He has over 3 decades of experience in various new product development roles, and has also worked in the US for both construction equipment and other engineering products. Currently, Pradeep is engaged in strategic product planning with key focus on alternative energy sources for CEV application. Pradeep's views would be interesting and exclusive, as he is the only vehicle OEM speaker in our panel today. Our third speaker is Mr. Jog Lal, OEM Sales and Marketing Director at Eminox in the UK. Now, though Jog and his company are based in the United Kingdom, he has a strong connect with the Indian market as well. In addition to leading the global OEM sales and marketing development at Eminox, Jog is also the director of the IP Rings Eminox joint venture that has its base in Chennai, India. With a career of more than 30 years in the field of transportation technology and having held key roles in companies like TNN Piston, Delphi, Cosworth, and Solera, Jog will bring in interesting insights in today's discussion. Our fourth and final speaker is Mr. Nandan Agrawal, MD, Nandan Group of Companies. A chemical engineer and an MBA, Nandan joined the family business of Lubricant, established by his father, a first-generation entrepreneur, and developed it into one of the fastest-growing business houses in the country, with diversified interests in lubricants, AdBlue, petroleum derivatives, and food products catering to multidisciplinary industries. With an eye on expansion and diversification, Nandan set up India's first AdBlue manufacturing plant in 2011 through a joint venture with Cruise Automotive GmbH. Today, Nandan Group is the market leader in the AdBlue space and amongst the top 10 lubricant companies in the country. We look forward to your views on AdBlue and lubricant side of the picture, Nandan, in today's discussion. Finally, we come to our moderator, Mr. Saideep Sudhakar, Associate Director, Mobility Research, Frost & Sullivan. With over 14 years of automotive consulting experience, especially in automotive strategic research and consulting, market intelligence, competitive intelligence, etc., Saideep has specific expertise in diversification and new market entry, competitive benchmarking, alternate powertrain, buses, and off-highway equipment. He has delivered several syndicated research services on the alternate powertrain systems, such as natural gas trucks, hybrid and electric trucks, electric and fuel cell buses as well. In a way, Saideep is tailor-made for this discussion, as the topic is among his favorite and key focus areas. Now that we've known more about our speakers, some quick information for our audience. You can chat with your co-participants using the chat option, and you can share your questions during the Q&A session as well. We will try and take as many questions as possible towards the end of the session. And as always, the session is running live on YouTube on the Motorindia channel. So without any further ado, over to Jose for the presentation. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Warm welcome to the rest of the panelists here. For me, it's especially important to be here. I started my venture in Kojali 24 years ago and in India since the year 2009 when I visited for the first time. I have seen how the technology has evolved ever since in India. I remember back in 2009, BS3 was live. Now we're evolving towards BS6. So we'll be talking about that in a minute with my colleagues. I wanted to share a view with you of our company, just small hints so you better understand our vision of the market and what Kojali is doing, okay? All right, so this is our company, our headquarters in Spain. We are located in the south of Spain, 150 kilometers south Madrid. Kojali is a Spanish company founded in the year 1991. Okay, initially working in the remanufacturing of fan clutches, but we really evolved as the technology was evolving in the vehicles, in the commercial vehicles, right? So 25 years ago, let's see that we started the evolution also with heavy-duty industry, with the new ECUs coming into vehicles in Europe. So we had to adapt our business model, and right there we decided to launch our first diagnostic equipment, right? But I will come to that in a minute. So we are today more than 725 employees. That's our figures with turnover. And very important for us is the research, development, and innovation investments that we do. As I mentioned, we're innovating, we are creating new technological divisions like telematics, remote diagnostics, onboard solutions, and so on for the vehicles. So this is our latest product portfolio in diagnostics. We cover commercial vehicles, meaning buses, light commercial vehicles, trailers, heavy-duty vehicles, of course, and manufacturers. We cooperate with OEMs worldwide also. We cover also the machinery industry, the agricultural vehicles industry, off-highway vehicles, material handling equipment. We were the first equipment to launch a product dedicated to material handling, very important nowadays, because it's not only combustion engines, but there's a lot of electrical systems and connectivity here. And we have a division also of marine, yeah? With regards to the parts, and these were the origins of our company, we now manufacture. All that you see here is new, except for the ECUs, which we nowadays remanufacture. We have great expertise in these remanufacturing lines. Fan clutches for heavy-duty vehicles, braking system, transmission components, and electronic components also here. We wanted to give you our view today of how we see the present, which is already here with the new technologies, the mega trends in the industry, the onboard experiences that all the manufacturers are putting in their vehicles, predictive maintenance, shield accidents, of course, all the aid systems that the manufacturers incorporate in the vehicles, and of course, the horizon for zero emissions for 2030 and 2017, which is marked in India. I think is of a great commitment of the Indian government to be able to set up these milestones. We have to understand that today India is the third country that emits greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So it's a great bet from the Indian government to be able to reduce down to zero in the year 2070. Of course, we'll be talking with the rest of the panelists about how we can help in the industry to come to this target, right? So as you see here, that's what Kojali can do for this horizon to meet the standards, to meet the zero emissions. So today we have advanced diagnostic service tools and other components to verify the current systems that help the anti-contamination, anti-pollution systems. We do manufacture NOx sensors, which are embedded in the systems that help the vehicles to contaminate less. We have developed a range of remote diagnostic equipments, which is able to predict failures in the vehicles, where we are able to control bidirectionally some systems, and we're even able to do DPF regeneration. So we don't have to go to the workshop in a specific moment, and we can keep their vehicle running without being emitting any more NOx to the atmosphere, right? All in all, it's very important for us and for the industry, I think, to put in place a training program, because of course we have to educate the workshops in these new technologies. So along with the rest of the product portfolio that we have what we call Jaltes University with webinars, e-learnings, and presential trainings, especially to educate the workshops in these ideas of exhaust systems and so on. We train today in Spain more than 1,000 workshops worldwide. We have programs with our partners. So we think it's very important to be able to service the complete networks and cooperate also with the OEMs to achieve this horizon that is set up in India. Also very important how OEMs are looking into the future and the type of requirements that they ask to the parts and process manufacturers and diagnostic manufacturers. So we see more and more that, of course, the standard ISO certifications are not enough. And today we have to commit to environmental certifications like the ISO 14001, safety certifications, and of course, social corporate responsibility certification. That's important for all the market players, for our company. We are really committed to sustainability to help also the Indian companies to achieve the zero emissions by 2070. Yeah. Just a brief summary. Also, these are the different divisions. We have diagnostics division in the upper area under the brand Jaltes. Also telematics with onboard diagnostics, very important also, which is the next step also to help towards zero emissions. Tools for the workshop equipment, of course, ISO boost for the agricultural. And then in the middle, you see the brands for Kojali parts that we supply to the industry. It's very important to mention how we get the data from the vehicles and how we can analyze the data and then put that into effect to reduce emissions, to help OEMs to analyze the behavior of their systems, the behavior and the errors that are present in the system, in the exhaust systems and in the rest of the systems, of course. So data science and big data is an important part of our company today. We're able to analyze thousands and thousands of data to come to conclusions to help OEMs and the market to obtain better solutions, right? All this is also possible thanks to our support team, which is directly in contact with the market, with the workshops, with our customers. And we implement all these type of solutions in our equipment, in our parts, right? So that's all from my side, what I wanted to say about Kojali. So back to you again.
Thank you, Jose. Over to you, Saidip. Saidip, you're on mute. Over to you for the discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Jose, for a wonderful overview of your products, which will help in OEMs as well as the vehicle fleet owners to meet the zero emission solutions. So let me start the panel discussion by giving a brief overview of the global emission standards. On the focus of today's discussion is more towards tailpipe emission standards, where we control the NOx and particulate matter from diesel engines. If you look at the India implemented BS6 in April 2020, China postponed it by a year and implemented China 6 in 2021. These are equivalent of Euro 6 standards. In US, the focus now is more on the ultra-NOx regulation, which will tighten the NOx limits by 75% below the current standards in 2024 and 90% by 2027. On the off-highway front, India implemented stage 4 from October 2021 and is planning to implement stage 5 from 2024. While stage 4 focused on diesel engines between 37 and 560 kilowatt, the BS 5 standards will cover a wide range of engines, including the smaller ones below 8 kilowatt and larger than 560 kilowatt, and also introduce a particulate number limits for engines with rated power between 19 and 560 kilowatt. So these BS stage 4 and stage 5 standards are more in general alignment with the European stage 4 and 5 standards for the non-road mobile machinery. So in today's discussion, we have an eminent panelist representing both the OEMs as well as the supplier front. I would like to open the panel discussion beginning with Mr. Pradeep Kumar Roy from Tata Hitachi. Other panelists can also raise their hands should they wish to add any points. Mr. Pradeep, a very good afternoon.
Good afternoon to everyone.
So the off-highway industry in India is witnessing a sea change with respect to the implementation of Stage 4 emission standards. Further, with a plan to implement Stage 5 in 2024, which requires an SCR system, how do you see the OEMs developing new products, particularly when you consider the cost sensitivity of the Indian construction equipment market? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you, Saidip, and greetings to everyone once again. This is a very pertinent question, and I'll be trying to address this more from the off-highway perspective. So, if you see in the off-highway industry, there is a technical impact and there is a commercial impact. So, if we go into the technical impact on this, look at where the off-highway industry today, if you see, we are talking of a very simple machine which has a mechanical engine, easy to maintain. So this has to switch to a CRDI electronic engine, and then it has to be added with an additional ATS system, namely DOC, DPF, and SCS system. So for the off-highway sector, this movement is a quantum jump, unlike possibly in the other areas on highway. So that is the number one thing to remember. The second thing, what is very important, if you see the off-highway sector, roughly we manufacture in India about 80,000 plus machines. And at least 50% of them are not really going to a gas station to fill diesel. So what it means that along with the diesel, now if we go into the SCS system especially, we have a fill for urea also. And both with 10 ppm sulfur level for diesel as well as the urea quality that is required. And when these fillings are done indirectly through some storage media and all, so the contamination control is going to be one single most challenge once you launch this machine in the field. And as you already said, the wilt products we have already gone in from April 21. And depending on the power, we have all the systems of DOC and SCR. DPF, of course, is not there in most machines. So fuel contamination is one area which is going to be very, very important. So the way as a wheel manufacturer we see is we have to first improve on the attitude, both on the customer as well as on service skills. On the product side, we have to take certain protective measures which we have already done. For example, a secondary fuel filter. And then we have to increase the depth ratio fill to the fuel ratio fill. So the intervals of depth filling can be enhanced so that we have a lesser chance for a customer to having to fill a depth. And of course, while this is happening, there is another good thing with this electronic and other changes, that is the telematics. So we also believe that going forward, the telematics system, other than the fleet management and the safety enabler, is also going to be a kind of a healthcare provider where both customer as well as our service guys are easily able to identify, foresee, and plan maintenance better. So these are some of the technical impacts that we see on an immediate future. If you see the product design in BS4 or CEV stage 4, when we go, there are certain sweet points, what we call, one is the 37 kilowatt or around 50 HP, and other is the 55 kilowatt or 74 HP. So in both these places, below 37 to above 37, you switch from mechanical to electronic, and with some bit of ATS, and above 74 HP or 55 kilowatt, you have the SCS system. So entire product line has tried to reorient amongst these, rather around these two sweet points, so that the machine could still be kept as simple as possible. So on the technical aspect, this reorientation of the product, the fuel and the depth quality, these are the two single most challenges that we see, but we don't think that this cannot be overcome. On the commercial or the cost impact, if you see, so the cost, all these put together, because it's a quantum jump, so we are expecting somewhere between 10% to 20% or even in excess of that. And especially with the commodity impact today, that is going to be very, very challenging to pass on to the customer at a total level. So possibly some of these we have to find out at the OE end how to mitigate. So for example, we have to have a sustainable demand. Construction equipment, if you see in the last decade or so, this has been very fluctuating. So we have to engage more with the government so that we can create a sustainable demand. Second is we have to drive import substitution, because the higher size of the machine has substantial part of imports built into this. We have to create additional, alternate or additional demand channels. For example, focus on imports is one where the construction equipment could go up to maybe in the next 5 years up to 15–20%, and then customized solutions. So these are other ways to mitigate around this particular focus, because to mitigate the cost. And of course, on the technology front, the customer would be more interested now just not on the owning, but on the total operating cost. So the main focus would be how to reduce the fuel consumption. So we will have to have a different set of hydraulic efficiency. We have to have this electronic integration into adaptive machine operation. So for a very, very specific operation, so the customer can use it at the best operating point. So these are some of the areas which we also have to cover for this. But overall, we think by the past experience of now almost a year and a quarter, that the challenges, what we perceived earlier, it's not very big, it is doable, but primary focus still remains on the quality of both fuel and depth, especially on the technical front.
Thanks, Mr. Pradeep. It was a wonderful overview of the ecosystem which are governing the emission from an OEM perspective. And now I would like to invite Jose to put forward his point here.
Jose, you can speak.
Yes, sorry. Just a comment to Pradeep. I totally agree with his speech. And one of the important things and challenges that we have is the total operating cost and the fuel reduction. So we see that today happening with telematics that you also mentioned. I just wanted to mention an example that we have with the fleet here in Spain of 2,000 vehicles. Just monitoring with the telematics the idle speed time of these 2,000 vehicles, we have been able to save more than 700 liters per month, of petrol in that fleet, in that small fleet, So that's a path to reduce emissions, of course, and further things with the telematics and onboard diagnostics, along with the safety also. What we are seeing in the off-highway industry is that our customers are demanding also cameras for the safety of the operators, of the drivers, of the environment. So I think we have a challenge ahead with a combined solution, putting telematics, onboard cameras, and field cameras to make a better and safer environment for the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Jose, for highlighting a real-time use case from Spain. Now I'd like to bring in Mr. Joglal from Eminox. What are the key technologies in the after-treatment system which will gain prominence as we see the implementation of Stage 5 standards in the off-highway segment?
So yeah, that's a key question across India at the moment, and clearly we got examples from Europe where we've already implemented Stage 5. Stage 5, as you will know, is very similar to Euro 6, so it's a combination of SCR, DOC, DPF. Like any challenge, particularly with off-road vehicles and agriculture, it's all about the spatial envelope available on that vehicle and equipment. And the focus really has been making sure, how do you make it more and more compact? One of the things that we've seen being developed, perhaps not highly used at the moment, but you got things like SCR on DPF that allows you to make a smaller after-treatment equipment. The close coupling of your complete system with the engine is also very important as well. Then on top of all of that, we've got to work with the engine manufacturers and the equipment manufacturers to make sure things like serviceability are very high. It's no good creating a SCR DOC DPF system where the DPF is very difficult to clean, so serviceability is very high. And then on top of that, the availability of spare parts, the availability of remanufacture, and also to meet a lot of CSR requirements, which are becoming higher and higher on the agenda of large corporations. How do we recycle the equipment? So, the development of after treatment now takes into consideration they should be able to recycle more than 95% of the entire equipment, and also to ensure there's a robust remanufacture business that's been created to support the afterlife of a vehicle and equipment as well. To that end, there's a growing market now for remanufactured DPFs. That's not the same as just cleaning DPFs. That's actually having a remanufacture process where you ensure the integrity of the DPF is still above 95% as far as functionality is concerned. So I hope that answers your question, Saidi.
Thanks, Mr. Jog, to highlight on the circular economy, which is driving the emission systems. Now I'd like to bring in Mr. Nandan Agarwal from the Nandan Group of Companies. What are the key technological developments in the lubricant sector for BS6 engines, as well as the stage 4-5 standards for off-highway vehicles?
Yeah, thanks, Pradeep, for this question. So basically, lubricants are playing a more important role as the emission norms are getting more stringent and tightened. Lower viscosity or the thinner engine oils with low sulfated ash, phosphorus and sulfur content, which is called as low SAPs, are essential to meet the stringent regulations from 2023. BS 6.2 for the on-highway is to be implemented effective 1st April 2023 in a phased manner with the CAFE 2 and the real driving emissions, respectively. To meet the stringent BS 6.2 targets, thinner engine oils will be required. These thinner engine oils will definitely improve the fuel efficiency to meet the CAFE norms. But at the same time, we'll have a challenge to reduce the impact on the engine life. Sorry about that. With real driving emissions, exhaust after treatment systems would also function at their peak levels. For this to occur, we would require engine oils with further low SAPs. NPL as a company has already started working on the next generation of engine oils and other lubricants to take care of these requirements. With BS 6.2 RD regulations, smaller diesel engines, 1500cc and above, will also be fitted with the SCR systems, thereby requiring AdBlue. So currently only 1800cc and above diesel engines, are fitted with the SCR. So with this new regulation, even the other diesel engines with a capacity of 1500cc would also require AdBlue. So with BS6 implementation, India is more or less in line with the Euro 6 specification. This also gives the automotive OEMs to look at higher export numbers and also oil manufacturing companies like us to cater to the global demand. The same would be applicable for AdBlue requirements, and we have seen a surge in the export inquiries for AdBlue as well.
Thanks, Mr. Nandan. And you touched upon a very important topic on the real driving emission norms. But do you actually, I just keep this question open to all the panelists. Do you see real driving emission norms coming to trucks and off-highway vehicles in future in India? And do you have a timeline in mind? Anybody would like to take it?
I think at some stage it will be required by the Indian market, because you can't ignore the fact that there is a real drive cycle that needs to be respected, within which the emissions need to be brought down. In terms of the timeline, that's $1 million question, Saidi. I think you would be better to answer it than some of the panelists.
Yeah, we actually don't see it slowly implemented just in the passenger car segment. So trucks probably another 5 to 10 years down the line.
Okay.
Well, it's very important, Saidi, to involve all the players here, because as I mentioned before, it's very good that the government is ruling for a cleaner environment. You need to take into account that 10% of the greenhouse gases that are emitted in India come from the transportation industry. So we do need to involve the rest of the players. We're talking about restrictions in big cities in India of Euro 4 below, they couldn't enter the countries. We have to take that seriously. We want the zero emissions horizon to work, of course. We have to work with the fleets. We have to work with the workshops. we have to install all this new technology. We have to follow. We have tools to be able to help them to also to save money, because it's not only about environment, but we need to approach them also that is beneficial for their own company. Also, they will reduce the total ownership cost, as we mentioned. So if we have an interesting speech and approach for the market, I think that it will be successful. The first step is there. The government has a clear vision of how to run the future in India. I think it's very important worldwide, as I mentioned before. So it's in the manufacturers to be able to involve the rest of the players to work together towards these milestones.
Jose, for your wonderful insight. Mr. Pradeep, would you like to convey something?
Yeah. Of course, timeline is very difficult to predict as on today. But comment especially on the off-highway sector's viewpoint. We've been watching this BS 6.1 with OBD1, and then in April 23, 6.2 with OBD2, and the kind of complexity that is there with this RD vis-a-vis setting up an NT limit. Still, if you see the on-highway sector, this is what is my perspective, is with all this difficulty, it still appears a much simpler version in terms of finalizing those parameters to come to a confirmatory factor. But when you look at an off-highway equipment, especially an excavator, it is idling at some time and then it is going into a digging mode or a dosing mode. And the fuel rate fluctuations are sometimes over 200%. Then the same machine operating in the south of India and in the north of India, depending on the weather conditions, the operators. So the variations are so vast. I don't see this is coming in the off-highway sector, especially in a big way in the near future. And also, I think because the off-highway sector, the type approval system is based on the NRTC 8-mode cycle. So, which is very capable of evaluating these transient modes under different conditions. So, the tailpipe emissions, especially for off-highway sector, I believe will be, I will not say difficult to replace, but it may take a little while before we are able to go into this RD system. This is my perspective.
Society, if I can build on what Jose and Pradeep said, I think they're absolutely on the money in terms of the observations of what actually happens in the marketplace. That really gives us food for thought in terms of, hey, what sort of hybrid technology do we really need? Because, you know, whether it's an off-road machine idling or whether you're in the middle of Delhi or Mumbai traveling, you're still idling for long periods of time because of the traffic network. I think there's a real need to understand how electronic technology will actually sit alongside internal combustion engine technology, and then how you combine the two together to come up with a much better solution for the Indian market to hit the targets that were cited earlier on towards that journey to net zero.
Thanks, Mr. John. Now, I would like to touch upon a very important topic here with respect to the emissions, the OBDs. The important aspect of the BS6 vehicles is the use of the OBD systems, which have the capability to monitor a lot of operating parameters. Now, how can we use this information for warranty claims, diagnose the potential failure, and also identify the driver negligence? Can we provide other allied benefits to customer? And I would like Jose to share his thoughts on this perspective.
Okay, first I would like to mention that it's important not to punish the drivers, okay, or the fleets, right? We have to use a different approach. We have to try to make them understand that it's beneficial for their operating cost, and they will save money, basically, at the end of the month. So there is a change, of course, with the new technology. If you see the truck park in India with the BS6 technology, it's plenty of ECUs. We're coming out of one engine ECU and brake system ECU to 6 ECUs in one truck at the moment, right? So mechanics, technicians, they have to adapt to the new technologies, right? They need diagnostic equipment, they need tools to be able to repair better, okay? Now, we can get all types of information from the OBD. not only to assess the negligence of the driver, of course, which is important to maybe award those better drivers, and it's very important, the eco-driving now in telematics and in the fleets, that we're working a lot in consultancy with the fleets in Europe to convince them that they have to award the best drivers, and they need to use the parameters we're able to give them through the OBD. So we have two ways of obtaining data. One is the workshop data we get, okay, from the OBD, and one is remote data we're able to get with the telematics, onboard telematics, right? We get the same data either way, and we can even operate some of the systems while the vehicle is running. So with regards to the driving behavior, we're able to record the data and to save the data, okay? So we are able afterwards to assess if the driver was performing well or he was abusing on the engine and so on. And we are able to print all that in reports. So all type of technology, all type of reports you can imagine we can put in place to be able to run better the workshop, to run better the claims, to help the fleets to be more efficient at the end of the day. Again, as I mentioned before, it's very important to train people. We see this process happening in Europe for many years now. And at the end of the day, mechanics back 20 years ago, they didn't know how to use a computer because they didn't need a computer. They were using just the hammer to change the wheels. And that changed dramatically. Now in India, it's happening very fast. You have skipped BS5. So you have gone from BS4 to BS6 in a couple of years. And that's a dramatic change in technology for many of the technicians. So again, very important for the market is the training and how to aware people and make fleets aware that they can save money and be more efficient with the new technologies. So data is a challenge. Data is a very good thing for the fleets and for the market because we're able to solve problems also for the future. We are able to improve systems. We are able to help OEMs. So connectivity in general, being able to connect the vehicle with the workshops, with the operators, that's happening now. It's happening in India, and it's a very good thing for all the market players.
Thanks, Mr. Joseph, to give us a very good overview of the OBD systems and the role it has to play in the BS6 engines. Now I'd like to come back to Mr. Pradeep from Tata Hitachi. So how do you see the industry addressing customer concerns on acquisition cost, ownership cost, equipment performance, and fuel efficiency due to the implementation of emission regulations?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. See, before I start answering your question, we have to see especially where are we and what are we trying to be in the next 10 years or so. So today, if you see the construction equipment, 85% or above is basically financed by some financing company. I just talked about a little while back, the cost would go up somewhere anything between 10-12% to in excess of 20%, especially if the safety standards are also going to come in along with all this. And we all are aware of the commodity pressure that we have, especially with respect to the steel price index and others. So this is a big challenge. The question is, can we pass on these to the customer? My take would be no at this point of time. So and also from the OE perspective, standalone, it's very difficult to address this kind of a quantum jump. So what is very important is that we have to have some kind of a robust ecosystem. We today are about a $6.5 billion construction equipment market. We aspire to go to about 25 billion by 2030. And from 80,000 odd equipment manufacturing in India to about 250,000. So if we are trying to address all these, the ecosystem is of paramount interest. When we say ecosystem, it's just not the customer or the way. We have to look at the vendors. We have to look at the suppliers. We have to engage with the government, the sustained demand, because we have a very good foresight, as if you all have gone through the government investment plans and all. But having said that, we have been seeing a very fluctuation the kind of progress that we've been making in the last decade. Because if you don't have a sustained demand, you will not be able to draw in a lot of capex going into R&D, because you have to look at import substitution. You cannot do it without a lot of investment in the R&D. If you are not able to pass on to the customer, that means on a short run, at least you have to cut down on your margin. If you have to cut down your margin and still be profitable, so you have to look at a sustainable volume to carry you through. You have to look at alternate means of other than the product, the spares, the surface, the other modes of profit or revenue generations. So these are some of the things we need to address, just not the cost per se in the long run. In terms of performance, when you mentioned, I already said that a typical ATS system actually is a fuel intensive. So if we have to compensate, I believe it's already showing up. The hydraulic technology has to advance. The role of telematics and finer control and adaptive control are very customer based. So this has to go up. We had been dealing with some of our hydraulic oil as well as engine oil supplier, where we're looking at long drain intervals of this, and also the synthetic oils promises to improve the fuel efficiency. So all this has to be in perspective together if we are going to address this kind of an action. On the short run, you talk about the acquisition cost. So you have to see 50% of their very, very small customer. So they are paying an EMI per month. Now, if you ask them that EMI has to go up by 10-15%, that's a very big challenge for them. So we are already talking to financing company, and some of them has agreed that for a longer loan term, so that the EMI level per month remains almost the same, but they have an pride. So these are very short term, but on the long term, we need to focus on the ecosystem and get everybody together, because then only we can really take up this challenge in a better way. I hope I answered some of your questions.
Thanks, Mr. Pradeep. Giving a wonderful perspective of the financing part from a small fleet owner's perspective. I would like to come to Mr. Jog Lal from Aminox. A question pertaining to the maintenance schedule. Whereas if you take the case of BS6 vehicles, you need a very strong regular maintenance schedule, failing which there will be a drop in fuel economy. How do we mitigate this challenge considering the Indian market?
Okay, it's like most service, maintenance, repair regimes. Yeah, the vehicle manufacturers, they recommend what that SMR regime is, and it's no different for after treatment. The key part of ensuring the after treatment system is fully functional is to ensure that the DPF is working properly. Now, most vehicles, all vehicles, they have a regeneration strategy on board already. Yeah, that regeneration strategy will ensure that the soot is cleaned from the filter as part of that process. Now, on top of that, as a result of oil burn, you will also get ash clog up the channels in the filter, because the filter's doing its job. Now, ash is a little bit more difficult to remove, and over time, it does clog up the DPF, and the DPF needs to be removed, and it has to be cleaned. If it's not cleaned, it will have an impact on the volumetric efficiency of the engine. As a result of that, the fuel efficiency then degrades. Now, cleaning a DPF isn't straightforward either. I mentioned that actually it's better to remanufacture it and bring it back to above 95% functionality than just clean it using most of the prevalent solutions available, which are often what we call pneumatic-based solutions. What Aminox has done through its sister company Ceramex, we've developed a patented technology called X-Purge, whereby we use purified water and pulsed air to remove and dislodge that difficult ash from the DPFs. And it's more of a remanufacture process than a cleaning process, which means that even in India, I can see a huge market where there's an exchange scheme for DPFs to keep the trucks on the road and reduce the they reduce the vehicle off the road time, hence increasing the uptime of the vehicles.
Thanks, Mr. John. At this point, I would like to bring in Nandan Agarwal. Mr. Nandan, would you like to elaborate more on the new business models which have been deployed by your group to ensure genuine products as well as add value to customers from a lubricant perspective?
Sure. So I'll cover both lubricants as well as AdBlue on this. And I'll start with the AdBlue development because as the emission norms are getting stringent, and especially with the introduction of stage 4 and later stage 5, the number of construction equipment with the SCR systems also will keep on increasing, thereby increasing the demand for AdBlue for this particular segment. So NPL has been at the forefront of the AdBlue development since the inception of Bharat Stage 4 in early 2010. And we are the pioneers for AdBlue manufacturing in the country. So we helped the commercial vehicle OEMs, when BS4 was introduced pan-India in 2017 on the availability of AdBlue to ensure that the vehicle uptime is maintained and the AdBlue requirements are sufficed. So today, with 5 years, with the working with the SCR systems for the on-highway, NPL has come a long way in terms of new business models and for ensuring quality and quantity for the customer as well as customer delight. We have introduced India's first AdBlue dispensing system, which with a legal metrology approved dispensing unit and a storage system with complete automation with IoT to ensure right quality and quantity to the end consumer. The salient features of the system include real-time urea sensor to monitor the urea concentration of the solution, OTP-based refilling system to ensure genuine AdBlue refill in the storage tank, and also central reporting of tank levels and customer transactions through IoT sensors and FCC. This introduction of bulk dispensing has ensured lower cost to the end consumer due to removal of packaging cost and also reduction in the overall bulk transport cost. Almost 40% of NPL sales in the last financial year was contributed by bulk supplies of AdBlue. NPL is also working on Deaf on Wheels model integrated with a mobile app to ensure door delivery of AdBlue to its customers, thereby enhancing customer experience and delight. This especially, as Mr. Pradeep mentioned, on the challenges of delivering fuel and DEF to the construction equipment and to ensure the quality and quantity. This solution, we believe, will definitely help the construction equipment industry to ensure the AdBlue is available at the doorstep through the door delivery model that we have introduced. Currently, NPL has 12 active manufacturing facilities for AdBlue spread across the country, and we have plans to increase it to around 40 by 2024 to facilitate deeper penetration of door delivery of AdBlue. Along with this, so this ensures the quality and quantity, and customer delight with these business models. I would also like to, touch upon the importance of quality assurance, which was again highlighted by Mr. Pradeep. Today, there is no regulation to monitor the quality of AdBlue or DEF in the country. But we have taken the initiative and the lead by liaising with various ministries to implement a quality control order on the product, which mandates the BIS certification for all AdBlue manufacturers. Currently, all of NPL's manufacturing facilities for AdBlue are certified by BIS, and we also have the VDA certification based on ISO 22241. So this will also help in ensuring the quality standards are maintained, especially when the construction equipment industry moves to stage 4 and stage 5 onwards.
Thanks, Mr. Nandan. At this point of time, I would like to come back again to Mr. Jose Ramon. From a service viewpoint, how do you see the diagnostic solutions evolving in workshops for BS6 as well as the stage 4-5 for off-highway vehicles?
Well, it's already there. I mean, it's happening for some years already in Europe, and we did adapt our solutions to the Indian market. We have already a customer base for quite some years. I mentioned I was there in 2009. So we have some operations, we have some distributors in the area now. So we're giving them tools to adapt to the new regulations, of course. We're giving them tools to be more efficient. There's a lot of data that can be recorded. There is a lot of data that can be shared. I mean, we have an ERP system connected in the equipment where they can share data between multiple workshops. So India is such a vast country. So we have multiple solutions to share data, to service vehicles in different areas of the country, right? So we are recording all this data. We are analyzing the quality of the AdBlue, which Nanda was saying before. So we're able to assess and to prioritize the errors in the vehicle also, not only with the workshop equipment, but also with the telematics. We can send alerts also to the fleets to understand that there's a problem in the system, yeah? That there is a problem in any electronic ECU, that there's a problem in the sensors. One of the common failures on the DPF system is the NOx sensor, yeah? So Joe was mentioning before that if there is no regeneration made, you can clog the system, and consequently the vehicles will lose power and they will eventually stop. So we have different phases where we can help the workshops and the fleets, meaning that we can do in a second phase a remote regeneration of the filter remotely. After that, they have to go to the service workshop, of course. So we can help them in many ways remotely. And at the end, if the final solution is to go to the workshop, they have to utilize the equipment to clean also the DPF system, to set up the ECUs, to install the sensors again, right? So along with that, we are not only supplying diagnostic solutions, because that, let's say, the easy part of the equation. We need to deliver repair solutions for the work. So we go beyond that. We want them to be able to repair independently these new systems. So we include a lot of data in the equipment, a lot of content that we develop, also sometimes in cooperation with the OEMs. So we enable them to be more efficient, to look right in the point, to look right in the sensor that is failing, so they're able to replace it faster. If we make a combination together with telematics, we're able even to anticipate what part of the problem is there, and we're able to, let's say, acquire the spare part before the vehicle is on the workshop. That's the ideal scenario, of course, right? We're already doing that. I mean, the vehicles allow us to monitor some sensors, like the brake pads, for example. It doesn't have to do with the AdBlue. So we can also make preventive and predictive maintenances, yeah? And we can change in advance or have the product in advance in the workshop. So that's happening for many years now in Europe. It's coming to India also. We have a lot of know-how and expertise on this type of systems, and I'm sure the fleets, the workshops in India will soon see the benefits of all this new technology. And I hope they rapidly buy it in, and we're able to help with the target of the government towards zero emission also.
Thanks, Mr. Jose. So we had, in turn, we had, as panelists, we have discussed in depth on a granular, with a strong granularity on different topics with respect to OBD, with respect to after treatment system, with respect to lubricants, and of course, from an OEM point of view. Now we'll move on to the future when you're talking about zero emission solutions. So here I'd first like to go to Mr. Pradeep. Within the construction machinery, which segment do you see as early adopters for sustainable solutions with strong use cases? And by sustainable solutions, I mean the battery electric and the fuel cell electric.
Okay. Let me first go to the battery, the green electricity solution, as people talk about it. So it's primarily to deal with the storage battery, where the charging is done through a green solutions like a solar or a windmill. So I think this is very, very the most advanced stages of alternate fuels that we are talking about. And here, the good part is the cost-wise vis-a-vis diesel is very, very competitive. So the two things that we have to keep in mind while we talk about this is, one, the power density of the battery. And the second is the charging, recharging cycle time. So typically, if we consider both of this, so that means essentially, unless we have a grid where we have access to this charging system, and also because of the power density, I think this solution in the construction equipment will be limited to the on highway. That means construction equipment which is equipped with tires and can move around in the city and actually go to the service station. Number one. And number two, it will also be limited to the smaller equipments, for example, the mini excavators, where the other things for example, the developing the smart cities. So there are government requirements that it has to be pollution free, it has to be very, very less noises. So coupled with these battery solutions, I think for immediate near future, this will remain with the smaller construction equipments, maybe 2-ton, 3-ton excavators, or a backhoe loader or something which can go to the charging station and actually do the charging. Getting into the bigger excavators, because of the power density, we have to carry a huge amount of battery bank, and today it's not appearing to be a very, very viable solution unless we have a hybrid system. Because for example, an excavator system, so there are certain operations which we can convert into an electric power. So partly it's a battery charging and partly going into hybrid. So some of the work, we are a joint venture with Hitachi Construction Machinery. So our parent company is also working on that line, amongst other companies like Hyundai, Caterpillar and others. But that is not so effective as on today for the mid-size and larger excavator. On the mining segments, I think purely cable electrical drilling wherever is possible, or a tunnel excavation. So that is an area which were already there prevalent, and I think will continue to be there, coupled with an autonomous performance of these like mining dump trucks, mining excavators. So where it is not battery, but total electrical drilling drum and sourced from a power grid. Now, outside of this, you talked also about the hydrogen fuel. So hydrogen fuel is possibly the cleanest solution, could be cost effective down the line, but the kind of infrastructure, the kind of engine or the fuel cell things that has to change. So a lot of investment has to actually go in if we are going to get into the construction equipment in the hydrogen fuel cell. But I see that in a distant future is one of the best and effective solutions. Outside of this, of course, we have been experimenting with biodiesel, we have been experimenting with LPG compactors, and also we are talking about e-diesel. So all these experimentation will go on. It's a question of easy to implement but higher cost, or difficult to implement but at a lower cost. So we will try to plug in some of the easy to implement lower cost initially, and then possibly difficult to implement but a more effective cost like hydrogen fuel cell. So this could be the trend going forward in the next decade or even past that.
Thanks, Mr. Pradeep, for a very insightful overview of the zero emission solutions in the off-highway segment. At this point of time, I'd like to bring in Mr. Jog Lal from Avinox, where we would focus on after treatment systems as we transition towards battery electric, fuel cell range extender, and hydrogen powered IC engines. Mr. Jog, your thoughts on the same?
Yeah. So look, I think most of the panelists have said it. We're on a journey. There's not going to be a silver bullet solution tomorrow morning. And we're working on those technologies today. And Pradeep very eloquently has mentioned some of that, what I call fuel diversity-based technologies that we are embarking on today. We really got to focus on those. Fuel diversity has never been more important than in recent days, I would say. The war between Russia and Ukraine has really brought to the forefront how perilous and dangerous it is for us to totally rely on fossil fuel. Yeah. Now, it remains a fact that fossil fuel is important, and we have to apply after treatment to make sure that we minimize the emissions from internal combustion engines. No doubt about that. But we also got to look at what is available in terms of biodiesel, in terms of bioethanol, bioethane, all these fuels that are byproducts of other processes that we live with day in and day out. Then, as you mentioned, hydrogen is becoming more and more important. Now, whilst the fuel cell technology may be very expensive and needs to be brought down in cost, hydrogen can be actually used on an internal combustion engine very successfully. And what we now need to do is focus on the production of hydrogen. And yes, when you use hydrogen in an internal combustion engine, you will still get NOx, but it's trace levels of NOx which can be treated with an SCR. So I see an ongoing requirement for the use of after treatment, certainly up to 2070, with different fuels to ensure that we minimize emissions, but at the same time embrace and take advantage of of fuel diversity as we go on this path to net zero.
Perfect, Mr. Char. So far we have been discussing about new vehicle sales and various aspects, but we have the elephant in the room in terms of the truck park. And what are the opportunities for suppliers as well as OEMs in the conversion of existing truck park to advanced emissions or probably to the zero emission solutions? I would like to open this question to the panel. So anybody can take it on.
I'll start because, as you know, Eminox has a 25-year history in retrofitting vehicles across the world to bring them up to the latest emission standards, depending where you are. So look, this is about economics. Does it make economical sense to upgrade an existing vehicle? Yeah. If the answer is yes, absolutely. There are retrofit systems that can be applied to old vehicles to bring them to the latest compliance levels. But at the same time, you know, then you've got to be brave enough to say, hey, if economically that vehicle can't be brought up to the level, is the government prepared to apply a scrap scheme? In other words, you've got to take those vehicles off the road. It's no good keeping them on the road if it's not economically viable to upgrade them. And that's a very tough question. But, you know, I said this before, India is one of the most tech-savvy countries anywhere in the world. Yeah. And when you start to apply, you know, technology to old vehicles, I think there's a real solution that can allow the overall reduction of pollution in a country like India with a very high population of vehicles.
Perfect, Mr. John. Bala, would you like to probably come in with the user questions?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, thank you first up, Pradeep, for moderating, you know, taking it in different directions, getting out probably the best from our panelists. Thank you for the panelists for your views as well. We do have some questions coming in. It's actually a mix of focused questions on particular topics. There are also a little bit broader ones beyond the ones that you see in the Q&A box. Let me start with one which I felt was very, very pertinent. How are we controlling emission from CVs and off-highway vehicles in India? Okay, and just to add to it, every step towards improvements in CV and CE industry seems to be a burden on the fleet or the equipment owners, since most operators are not well educated and due to lack of awareness, right? So it's a very interesting point and observation as well by one of our audience, somebody from the audience. How does the industry handle such a challenge? Can I request Mr. Pradeep to maybe start off, and other panelists can pitch in as well with your views?
Yeah, if I understood the question correctly, as I mentioned when I started off this construction equipment going into the emission control regime. So the challenge initially what we faced was certainly in terms of the customer, or rather the operator, not used to doing certain things. For example, the fuel, the DEF quality, the filling procedures. The second is because there are too many controls and sensors on the machine, So every now and then there would be error messages and other things coming up on your machine control unit and the display system. So to address this, the first thing we had to do is, before we go to the customer, we need a very, very wide and detailed program for scaling up of our service people as well as our dealer network. Because we don't expect customers to understand and appreciate this if we cannot understand and appreciate this at our end. So that is the first step we had to take. Secondly is making certain things which is foolproof. For example, I will give you filling of DEF. So normally they would take it in a small container, then transfer it to a funnel kind of a thing and then try to fill in. So we made a system where you can directly connect the commercially available 10 liter, 20 liter containers and directly be able to fill into the system. So it's a poker kind of a thing where you have to aid that advantage, otherwise they are going to do the same way the way they were doing. So these are some of the measures initially we had to take. We also had to take very closely into confidence. We don't manufacture engines, so we are sourcing it from either manufacturer outside of India or inside of India. So we need to take very closely these engine manufacturers also, especially in the initial stages of launching this machine. So we have to make joint visits to the field. And even if there is no complaint, we have to understand the way these machines are being operated and take proactive measures. So unless we do this, it's very difficult and it's almost going to be a pandemic in the initial stages.
Interesting. Do any of you want to pitch in? I mean, how do we handle a challenge where the industry is probably not as aware enough to accept solutions that are probably offered? Anybody want to add in?
I have a sort of a paradigm shift view here. So I'll take the risk of explaining myself, right? Mm-hmm. So look, we talked about a lot of technology. We also talked about the change in vehicle and equipment ownership. So people don't want to buy trucks anymore. They don't want to buy excavators. They want to lease them. Once you got them on that road of leasing them, actually, they don't want to do their own service and maintenance repair. They also want to subcontract that out, and they also want that to be part of the monthly fee. Once you got them at that stage, they also want the insurance to be part of that monthly fee. So you get to a stage whereby, actually, you know what? You now are going to provide a cognitive solution for your vehicle to maximize its uptime for the function that it was originally acquired for, right? Once you're at that point, then actually technology takes over. Just as Jose said, telematics then becomes exponentially more important. There's someone somewhere way away from the vehicle or equipment that's making decisions about that vehicle. They will also then coordinate, if necessary, for that vehicle or equipment to get to the right service depot. There's also someone monitoring fuel consumption, AdBlue consumption, oil usage, service maintenance. So I think I will not be surprised, knowing the speed at which India works at, where technology will overtake what we now consider as manual human intervention and solve the problem.
Very interesting, Jock. Thank you so much. Very, very interesting perspective. And I think the best part is it comes with a lot of understanding of the local, conditions and operating environment in India. Wonderful. Anything from Nandan and Jose you want to pitch in, or should we move to the next question maybe?
Well, I think it's important also what we see in Europe, the incentives from the government, because it's very easy to say, okay, you have to do this and that without any incentives. We do have that in Europe, so it's helping the transition towards zero emissions, of course. And as I mentioned before, along all the panel, training, to deliver this type of training, I totally agree with Joe. That's happening in Europe also, the leasing of the vehicles. But at the end of the day, they want also to be able to be more efficient. They put a lot of focus on the efficient driving, on the idle speed, they might not care about the mechanics sometimes because it's on a rental basis, right? But the owners, the manufacturers, they do have to care about mechanics. We have on board one of the biggest fleets in Europe for rentals, which have 48,000 vehicles today. So we see what type of parameters they're looking at, to optimize and to be more efficient, to deliver added value also to their customers, right? But everything comes with training. And of course, this transition also goes with incentives from the government. Just to come back to one of the previous versions, which I think is important, what we see in Europe today in the transition towards EV, especially in public sector, 30% of the buses today in the municipalities must be electrical. That's a must today, right? I don't see that happening in the highway, as Mr. Pradeep said. I don't see that happening in the truck industry. I see that happening in the bus industry. I see that happening in the last mile industry with the vans, of course, yeah. But training and incentives are very important to help with the transition.
Wonderful. Very important point. I think training is a very important factor that you've brought in, Jose. Anything, Nandan? I see you unmuted.
Yes, I just like to add on the lubricants, especially on the agro side. Thankfully, the construction equipment industry is sort of training the on-highway industry in terms of the adoption of the emission norms. So there's a lot of learning, which can be adopted from the on-highway industry, especially with respect to, the quality of DEF, the refilling mechanism. As Mr. Pradeep also mentioned, the mechanism for filling from a 10-liter, 20-liter canister rather than using a spout, using a funnel. So we introduced a spout, which could be attached directly to the canister, and the spout could be inserted, in the tank directly, so which avoids spillage or leakage and also ensures, the right quality. But we've also experienced that, the customers, start using the same spout again and again. So essentially it defeats the purpose. The spout, essentially becomes like a funnel. And, but it just, when it's just that repeated training, as, Jose also mentioned, that the awareness, has to be created, on the sensitivity of this product, in terms of the specifications and the cleanliness of the product. So this was the experience with the on-highway industry, where, awareness training really helped to improve the quality levels. And also, once, the awareness also, comes about when they face repair costs, when, the filters get clogged, when the injectors, get clogged. That's when, the consumers also want to be more, sensitive towards, taking care of the quality requirements. So there's a lot of learning from the construction, from the commercial vehicle industry, which is there for the construction equipment industry as it moves towards stage 4 and stage 5 emission norms.
Interesting. And a very interesting observation will be the person who's asked us that question had mentioned the operators are not very well educated. That is also something that we probably see changing definitely on the commercial vehicle side, with a lot of educated people coming into the industry. Their understanding is much at a higher level, and their awareness is also pretty high. And rightly so, training is going to take this few notches up. We'll probably wind up in 5 odd minutes because of the delay that we had because of the glitch. Jose, here's one more for you on the aftermarket side. And with the experience that you have being a global player operating in a market which is as matured as Europe, what opportunities or potential do global players have to improve and enhance the aftermarket space in India? We're talking about the CV and off-highway segment only. From a diagnostics and telematics point of view, what gaps do you see existing in India which could be filled probably in the near future?
Well, I believe everything is there to be built. There's nothing ready yet in the Indian market. So we are starting with the BS6, so we have a lot of work to do. And that's what we are trying to help with the operators, with the fleets. First of all, it's important to have a good network of workshops throughout the country, to have a good training program, to be able to build that up with the local states in India also, and to be able to make awareness to the fleets that telematics is important. So basically, at the end of the day, we are always talking about return of investment. Yeah, they need to see numbers, they need to see how it works, and they need to believe in the technology. We are at that stage at the moment in India. It will take some years, like it took here in Europe, but it's happening now. So we are ready for that transformation. We're ready to help the aftermarket also. We have the tools. We can connect, as I mentioned before, fleets, workshops, fleet managers. So there's a lot to do, and we are willing to help.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Jose. There are a couple of questions. There are a few very technical ones which we're not taking here. I mean, for the audience sake, there are a couple, one for Eminox, another for NPL. Then we'll go to a last question where we get an opinion from all our panelists. This one for you, Jorg. Any proven strategies to keep the DPF clogging to a minimum from your European experience? What strategies are followed for maintaining the DPF, particularly in the mining and construction space, which where these problems are prevalent?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, no magic answer here. One, use good quality fuel, use, good quality AdBlue, make sure your service regime is followed thoroughly, and get the DPF cleaned. It's simple as that. Get the DPF cleaned in the right way. Keep your vehicle, operating at its optimum level.
Wonderful. And as the previous answer went, I think a lot of awareness and training would probably help in this aspect. Thank you, Jorg.
Absolutely. And, you talked about, illiteracy and so on. Again, I think technology is going to overtake that. The use of mobile phones in India is huge. Absolutely. And I think we need to add augmented reality to it so that we overcome any language barriers and technical barriers to improve serviceability.
Oh, very interesting. Mobile phone is probably one of the...
We're working on augmented reality. Also,
there you go. There you go. Talk to Jose. It's happening.
Interesting. Nandan, one for you on the AdBlue side. Again, a practical ground level question. How do we manage degeneration of AdBlue and also any precautions and recovery process that would be in place, especially for construction equipment where they might not go to the filling stations? The filling might be done on site. Any your suggestions?
So hence, to address this issue, we've come up with the AdBlue on wheels, so DEF on wheels for the door delivery. So the construction equipment, we realize that they will not come to the fuel station or the AdBlue filling point. So we need to go to them. So with this sort of a solution, we believe that the construction equipment industry will not face issues in terms of the availability of AdBlue at the site. Having said that, even if there's a smaller consumption which needs to be stored in sort of barrels or small canisters, we need to follow the storage and handling SOPs which have been defined in the standards, the ISO 22241 standards. Essentially, to keep it away from direct sunlight, it has to be kept under a closed environment, away from direct sunlight, which would ensure that the shelf life of the product is elongated. And besides that, the general care in terms of ensuring that there's no external contamination which takes place at the time of storage or at the time of filling from the canister or the barrel in the vehicle. So proper spouts have to be used if there is no dispensing machine. But by the time the vehicle park for construction equipment fitted with SCR increases, there'll be enough DEF on wheels available to serve the commercial vehicle industry itself. So as I said earlier, the advantage of the construction vehicle industry is that it is lagging in terms of the emission norms. So a lot of benefit will be derived from the commercial vehicle industry, where the vehicle park is already quite substantial and it is increasing very, very rapidly. So the DEF on wheels is a solution which is there for both the commercial vehicle industry as well as for the construction equipment industry.
Thank you, Nandan. And when it comes from an expert in AdBlue, I think that adds a lot of value. We're going to sum up the entire session with one final question. It would be great if your answer is very brief and very precise. We're going to ask each of you, when we talk about emission control and sustainability in India, what is the one factor or aspect that comes to your mind that India needs to focus on to reach the goal? This would be your concluding remarks as well. So as brief, and you can go. Whoever wants can go first. I think that would be your.
I'll go first, yeah. So look, you got to marry up the after treatment with a very good engine as well. Yeah, really focus on improving the engine technology, improve its volumetric efficiency, yeah, and marry it up with a good after treatment system. It's key for India.
Wonderful.
Well, if I may, I will focus more in the service side, of course. I've been speaking a lot about that in the panel. So bringing down to ground the milestones that the government has set up is very important. So we have to educate people. We have to educate workshops. I've seen this in other countries where they try to overcome the current regulations. They try to emulate AdBlue systems and this technology. So it's very important to create this mentality towards zero emission, towards the whole fleet and the whole population, really.
Wonderful. Pradeep?
Yeah, I would think India has by far one of the best tech-savvy young manpower in the world today. And the technology is there. So just marry them with the right attitude and a little bit of infrastructural support from the government. Yeah. It's not going to be next day, but it is going to be steady, but surely we can achieve the goal of 2070.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then I just like to add that India needs to take a holistic approach towards emissions, not follow a particular narrative, be it EVs or be it fuels, hydrogen fuel cells or alternative fuels in the ICE. Technology, definitely the core technology would be important, but what is more important is the actual implementation of the norms on the ground. So real driving emissions is what will matter the most. And not only for the new vehicles, but for the existing vehicles, how we can sort of, through a scrappage policy or through incentivization to, for retrofitment to meet the latest emission norms, that will play an important role in meeting the, 2070 targets, zero emissions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think it's time to wind up the session. And I think as this last sum up indicated, the best part was the panel was so diversified. I think we have a speaker from the OEM side who brought in some very, very interesting insights from the OEM as an OEM vehicle maker. We had an after treatment expert here, who brought in some fantastic perspective, not just from the global angle, also a lot of understanding of the Indian market. Then we have Nandan from the lubricant and the AdBlue space, another very important component. And then we had Jose from Kojali, who's not only a speaker here, also partner for this entire session. I think 4 of you were a great set of a panel. I think you threw up some very, very interesting and insightful views. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your valuable views based on your experience. We really evaluate a lot. And to Saideep for actually steering this discussion wonderfully well. I think giving it a very good direction and bringing the best out of our panelists as well. Finally, to our audience as well, thank you so much for joining us. The session wouldn't be possible without all of you, and also for the interesting questions. Some of them are a little technical, which we'll probably pass on to our panelists for them to reach out to you later. So thank you once again to Pradeep, to Yog, Jose, and Nandan for your time and your presence. So until our next session, we bid you goodbye to all of you.
Thank you. I hope to see you before 2030. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.